Sermon of the Week focus based on the book Nehemiah. "How you doing, bro?" the young man asked the older. So, the older replied. "Looks like you are. You have a nice pad here, and looks like nice threads. I should think you'd be real happy here. Any women?" "Yeah, I have a good life, but there are some ups and downs. I sure can't see 'em. Looks like you got everything anyone could want," the younger said. "Like I say, but how about you? How are you doing?" the older said. "Doing good, real good." The older man detected the strained smile of his fellow. "Something wrong? You don't seem so convincing. What's going on?" the older man said, discerning that some problem did exist. Well, come on, you can tell me. I'm a Hebrew. Well, I used to be. You have to renounce everything if you want to live here in Shushan. You have to become a card-carrying Mede and worship only their God. What happens if you, off with your head? No questions asked, the older man said. "Wow, you can't even pray or celebrate our feasts?" the younger man said, shaking his head. "Yeah, it's different, but I get along. I'll still pray in silence." "So what do you do?" the younger asked. "I'm the king's cupbearer." "What's that mean?" "I serve the king every day. I'm at his side at all times. I order or bring him wine, food, documents, whatever he wishes," the older man said. "Protect and serve? I am to die for him if necessary. I taste his wine before he drinks it. He has many, many enemies." "Time for women?" the young man said. "Used to. Art banished his queen because she was out cold. She is out in the country estate. He used to send me out there to check on her, and she was anything but cold." A wry smile came to his face. "Lucky you." "Yeah, I'm a lucky guy," the older man said. "So what brings you all the time, all the way over here anyway?" he continued. "Are we in private?" the younger man asked. The older man waved his gloved hand, and the young manservant stepped out of the room. In a softer voice, the young man went on. "The prophet sent me over to see if you can help us. You seem to have a lot of influence, and we need a lot of help." "How so? I heard our temple has been rebuilt." "Oh, yes, it's a grand structure and a fantastic place to worship. But our long-standing regional enemies are chomping at the bit. Jerusalem is wide open. The walls are a shambles. An army can walk in and take over any time they choose." "Why haven't they?" the older man asked. "They're afraid." "Afraid of what?" "They're afraid of you, of what King Art will think or do, or both," the young man replied. "I see," the older man said, stroking his beard. "I don't know. I just don't know if I can do anything." "You do have the king's ear, don't you?" the older man nodded. "Well, I implore you, the prophet implores you, our people implore you. King David's city needs its walls rebuilt, or eventually the Samaritans or the Philistines, or maybe even Pharaoh himself, will march in and make us slaves all over again." The younger man lowered his head. "We won't survive. Our people won't survive another slave era. God's people will disappear from the face of the earth." He raised his head in the dim light, but the older man could see real tears welling in his friend's eyes, and he felt tears welling in his own. He took his young friend's hand and squeezed it tightly. "I'll try," he said in a cracking voice. The two recovered their emotions after a bit, and both stood. They firmly shook hands. The younger man turned and walked briskly from the room. The older man awoke the next morning, but had only slept off and on. Yesterday's discussion returned vividly to his mind, and as he brushed his teeth, his forehead began to sweat profusely. His wife was still sound asleep. She was a lady in waiting for the new queen, and as the evening meals would morph into parties and more nearly every night, she would often get home very late or very early. He thought about how he could help his people, but he just didn't have a clue as to how to go about it. As he finally dozed off as the sun was coming up, he whispered a little prayer, not thinking it would be answered any time soon. He maintained a faith in his God, but it had grown weaker and weaker as the years went by, and the Eastern influences became stronger and stronger. His wife was very persuasive, as was the exiled Queen Vashti. His wife knew of that relationship, but was often required to entertain visiting dignitaries herself, so things worked out between he and his wife well enough. Finished with his little duties, he dressed, kissed his wife's bare bottom, and marched the 2 miles to the palace. The morning air was crisp, and the clear sky helped refresh his cluttered mind. As he walked, he began feeling better and better. He hit himself sharply on his own cheek with his gloved hand. He started to think maybe his little problem might be worked out after all. He sent another silent prayer skyward as he entered the sumptuous palace grounds. His walk became more confident as he realized his God might be able to help him and help his people back in Jerusalem. Didn't know how yet, but the ancient stories of how God assisted and sustained his people through thick and thin were still in his mind. "Good morning, Nehemiah," the captain of the guard said as Nehemiah stepped into the main hall of the palace. "I expect His Highness at any moment." "Good. I'll take my place at the table and I'll select his wine." He strode over to the massive table of King Artaxerxes and motioned for the wine steward to bring out the wine cart from the cellar. It soon arrived, and Nehemiah selected a nice white Riesling and a white Chardonnay. The king liked them both, but if the queen joined the king for the morning brunch, she'd prefer the lighter Chardonnay. He double-checked the place and settings and then stood at attention awaiting the royalty. He did not have to wait long. The king rode in on his carriage, manned by 4 eunuchs. They brought him in briskly, and he got out and took his customary seat at the head of the 100-foot table. "Morning, Your Excellency," Nehemiah said without smiling. The king nodded. He was a large man, 6'4", and now some 300 pounds. "Brunch is served." Nehemiah poured 2 glasses of wine. He drank a sip from the first, and after about 30 seconds set the second one in front of Art, as everyone called the king, except to his face. "Fine morning," the king said. "You don't seem very happy today. You should be. The sky is high and the day is warm." "Another late night, and my ulcer's kicking up," Nehemiah said truthfully. He had been with Vashti, then his wife, and then the visitors showed up, causing him to get little sleep despite passionate exhaustion. "You must take care of yourself. I need you. You're about the only one I can trust around here, sir." "A king's life is precarious at best, as you know. Sir, I'd like to talk to you." Just then the most beautiful woman in the known world strode into the room and sat on the king's lap. "Hi, honey," she said. "Come here, Nehemiah." She pulled him toward her and kissed him full on the lips. As she pulled away, a smile finally came to Nehemiah's lips for the first time that day. "You can do better than that. Kiss him again." She smiled, but Nehemiah stepped back. "That's in order, cupbearer," Artaxerxes said. "You can't refuse your king, Nehemiah," Esther said. She rose, put her arms around him, and kissed him again. She did not pull away for over a minute. He had never felt sweeter lips, but he bowed and stepped back again. "Artie, my king, my love, I want this man in my bedroom this night," Queen Esther said, putting her arms around her new love again. "Done." The king snapped his fingers. Nehemiah could not help but drop his lower jaw. But he bowed in acknowledgement. He had no idea how this was going to work out, but he knew it would be bad. "How is your focus?" What is focus? Webster defines it as concentrating all one's thoughts on a single point. The human mind is capable of doing just that, but many either fail to realize it or take the time to do so. Many humans are good at focusing, but many more are not. When we wake up in the morning, we have a plan. We have a good idea what we plan to accomplish that day. We often don't think of it, but only a few get up with no preconceived plan for their day. Some have orders, such as in the military. Some have a routine, such as those in prison. Some have a schedule to follow, such as those in a nursing home. Some have a job which dictates their day. Some have goals to achieve, such as the professional. Some have people they must please, such as politicians. Some have people to nurture, such as teachers. Some have people to comfort, such as pastors. I could go on and on and on. The list is endless, but the scenario is the same. God gave man something to do. Let me repeat that. God gave man something to do. He also gave us the means to do it. When I hear the word focus, the first thing that comes to my mind is camera. When I look through the lens, I first make sure that I can see what I want to take a picture of. The second thing is that I make sure the object of my picture is in focus. That is, the object can be clearly seen, that it is not blurry. Cell phone cameras are no exception. The object must be in the frame and in focus. Automatic almost always works. I said almost. What makes it not work? Distractions. Of course, if someone gets into your picture standing closer to you than the pretty flowers you're trying to take a picture of, then one or the other might be out of focus. If your friend photobombs your selfie, you or your friend might be out of focus. A man gets up in the morning, showers and dresses, and has breakfast. Most of us have our own routine and seldom vary from it. Let us say the man has Cheerios and milk for every breakfast, but his milk is sour this day. He skips the cereal and with a bit of disgust heads for work. Maybe he will stop for a donut on the way, or maybe he is pressed for time and will drive through McDonald's or for a McMuffin. Either way, his routine has been disrupted. His focus this day is at the very least slightly disrupted. How will he respond to this change? It can be in a myriad of ways. Most of us will just try to ignore the little inconvenience and pick up some fresh milk on the way home. But some will be a little late for work. The boss might yell a bit. Some will be a little distracted at the morning conference or miss it altogether. Some will take a coffee break early, feeling a little weak. Or maybe we took a sip of sour milk and got some gastric upset or diarrhea. Or maybe we'll end up in the emergency room with food poisoning. The possibilities are endless. But the essence of the story is the same. How do we deal with daily distractions that are present in all our lives? Some do well with the little distractions, the minor ones, but collapse in a heap if there is something major. Others are the opposite. They get very upset at little things, but when something big happens, such as a fire, they become well focused at the task at hand. History is full of people who were able to maintain their focus to a degree far above the normal. Jackie Robinson is a fascinating character. He was superbly talented as an athlete that just wanted to play baseball. However, he was born at a time when the black athlete was not allowed to play Major League Baseball. He contented himself with playing in the minor leagues. He was so talented he became one of the minor league's great players, something he was resigned to. Then one morning his plan for the day received a distraction. A God-fearing owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers baseball team called him and said he wanted to sign him to play for the Dodgers. Jackie shrank from the idea. He knew right away it would mean trouble for him. Yes, he did want to play in the major leagues. He knew he could compete, if not at star level. At least he could compete. But deep down, he, as well as Mr. Branch Rickey of the Dodgers, knew the repercussions would be severe to the point of life-threatening. He wasn't sure he wanted to be the spearhead to fight racism in America. After World War II, racism remained rampant in America, especially south of the Mason-Dixon line. So what did Jackie do? He was in between the rockiest and the hardest of places. He loved baseball, but was he ready to die for it? He wasn't sure. All his life, his focus had been to become a great baseball player. Now he had realized that dream. But was he going to let the distraction destroy his dream? What did he do? What would you do? What do you do? How do you treat distractions to your focus, big or little? It is a pattern we develop from an early age, but the better we maintain our focus on our own goals, the more successful we become, the closer we get to our own goals. Let's see what Jackie did. First, he consulted those people most close to him, his family, his girlfriend, his peers. From this, he got some mixed answers, no definite majority either way. Encouraged, he talked again to his boss, Mr. Rickey. Still, nothing was set in stone. Then he let it play for a while. Time seemed to help. He continued to excel in the minors. He became engaged to his future wife. The Dodgers still wanted him. Things began to point more and more in one direction. Finally, he consulted his God. I believe he finally realized who it was that put him in the position he was in. I believe he finally realized what God wanted him to do. Finally, it all came together. It all came into focus and stayed in focus. And as they say, the rest is history. Jackie joined the Dodgers in 1947. Countless racist bullets were fired his way, but he remained true to his goals, that of becoming a great ball player for all the world to see. His Dodgers won the pennant in his first year. Soon other black players were playing in the major leagues. His 1955 Brooklyn Dodgers team won the World Series. Mr. Robinson retired after the 56th season and is now in the Hall of Fame. His uniform number 42 has been retired in his honor by all 30 major league teams. God was going to find a man to help him break down the evilness of racism in America. If Jackie had said no, God would have gone on to find somebody else. Jackie's life did not eliminate racism, but it sure swung the pendulum in the direction of good. How about you? Do you think God is into your life? Is he helping you to deal with your distractions, your focus, or is this all a bunch of baloney? Is man fully capable of dealing with his distractions all by himself? The vast majority of our world does believe in some higher power or being, but the vast majority think themselves fully capable of dealing with their everyday lives. They believe their own actions are the reason for their success. Oh, when a crisis comes along, such as a mass murder or a hurricane or some other disaster, everyone calls on their higher power for help and comfort. When the news dies down, they all go back to their usual pattern of self-reliance as if no tragedy had happened. Business as usual. So where do we get answers to this question? Our stock answer is that man is in control. God steps in a crisis. What does our experience tell us? What does the record of history tell us? We see how Jackie Robinson dealt with his distraction and how successful he was. Let's turn back to our hero Nehemiah. Let's take a look at how he dealt with distractions to his focus. Let's see if we can learn anything from him. Nehemiah's day went pretty much as usual, but the excess acid played havoc with his gastric lining. He couldn't eat and drank very little all day. It was nearly 7 p.m. and his shift was almost over. The king's usual evening meal, party, orgy was gradually getting going. Nehemiah stepped up next to his king and gave him another glass of wine. He tasted it first himself. As the wine hit his stomach, he winced. "Are you okay, Nehemiah?" the king asked. "Fine, sir." "You better be. My queen, my Esther, is expecting a night of passion like she has never had before. I'm getting, older. She's too much for me sometimes. See these little courtesans? They just lay there and let me do whatever I want. But my Esther, she's a wild thing. Vashti was so cold and Esther is so hot. I need something in the middle. But I trust you. I know you will be a match for her femininity." "I'll do my best, sir," Nehemiah said. He wondered how his king Artaxerxes knew anything about his Nehemiah's prowess in the bedroom, but he didn't ask. "She's expecting you at 11. Get a little supper and rest. You'll need it," the king said. "Sir, I wonder if I might talk to you sometime about a matter," Nehemiah said in a quiet voice. The party was ramping up. "What did you say?" the king asked. "Wonder if I could, you go and relax. We'll talk tomorrow. I'll want to hear all the details." Nehemiah went home, but his wife was already at the king's party. Some Grecian dignitaries were in town. He looked at the fresh bread on the table, but only felt nausea. Found some milk and took a few sips. He did not know what to do. Should he run away? Should he go to Esther's boudoir? Either way, he knew things wouldn't work. The jealous king would probably have his head once Nehemiah, a cupbearer, had satisfied the king's young wife, something the king could not do. Nehemiah threw his hands in the air and then remembered his friend's plea. He knelt down and prayed in earnest for direction from his God. As 10 p.m. rolled around, he bathed and got ready for what he knew would be the end of not only his favorite job, but likely his life. He reached the king's hall at 10:30, hoping the king or the queen had changed their minds. Ah, Nehemiah, you're just on time. Esther just retired to her boudoir. She's ready for you. Go in to her and enjoy. Nehemiah's stomach flared, but he did as ordered. As he entered, he saw Esther resting on luxurious pink and lilac pillows. She was wearing a sheer white negligee which hid nothing. Come here, my dear Nehemiah. I've wanted you from the first day I saw you. I finally convinced Artie. Anyway, he has his courtesans. Come here and teach me everything you know about love. Vashti says you are the best in all the Medo Persia. Nehemiah was already in a full sweat, but when Esther spoke of his liaisons with Vashti, he nearly fainted. No one knows. She pressed her warm hands to his lips and then kissed him. She proceeded to lead him into the most passionate 2 hours of his life. When they were both fully exhausted, Esther waved all of her ladies in waiting from the room. They were now alone for the first time. I hope things... She again pressed her warm hands to his lips and kissed the words away. I know you are a Hebrew, but did you know that I also am a Hebrew? Nehemiah shrank back, staring at her incredulously. But you can't... She again pressed her hands to his lips. I am a Hebrew, but I have 2 wonderful things going for me. Number 1, I am a woman, and some say the world's most beautiful, and number 2, I love the only true God with all my heart. Nehemiah stared at her, unable to speak. Finally he gestured that he understood. My queen, our people are in great need. I know. I am aware of their plight. They need the walls of our beloved city of Jerusalem rebuilt. He was almost in shock. He had no idea. His stomach relaxed just slightly. Was this night a dream, or was it a dream come true? I knew of no other way to speak to you. I hope you do not think less of me. I have offhandedly spoke to the king about the situation in Jerusalem. He has said he will think about it. I asked to speak to him, and he said he would try to make time tomorrow, Nehemiah said softly. He will. He is putty in my arms. He will do anything I ask. Talk to him tomorrow. I think he will help our people. His big concern is that if he doesn't rebuild those walls, one of his enemies will take control of Jerusalem, something he cannot afford to have happen. His problem is that he has so many building projects he cannot spare a man or a crew to do the job. Nehemiah, my love, I know you can do anything if you put your mind to it. Tell the king you will build for him. Nehemiah stared first at the floor, then at the breaking dawn, then at the most beautiful woman in the world. His dreams had all come true in the span of a few hours. He bowed his head and sent up a silent prayer of thanks. As he bowed, he felt the warm hands of his queen on his. As he looked up, there were tears in her eyes, and soon in his. Our God works in mysterious ways, he said. We can only trust him always, she said. My Queen Esther, you are the most wonderful thing that has ever happened to me. He rose slowly. And you are the most wonderful man that I have ever met. He bowed deeply and then turned to leave. Apologize to your wife and Vashti, Nehemiah. They are both madly in love with you. I will, Nehemiah said. He then turned, and his biggest smile ever lit up his face. Nehemiah had difficulty keeping focus once the pressure from a higher power, in this case royalty, was turned up. It seems he had little choice, but in fact he did have many choices. In his mind, if he did not agree to do as the king and queen wished, but he could have said, I can't make love to your queen, I'm married. His perception, no doubt, would have been that he would be put to death, but there was a possibility that he might not. Would God step in, or would the royalty appreciate his stand for what was right? We shall never know that one, but one can take a look at another of God's heroes. Joseph had a very similar situation to cope with. His master in Egypt, Potiphar, had a wife who wanted Joseph's body and was very beautiful and very persuasive. We are not told how long the seductress worked on her prey, but likely it was a long time. Joseph spurned advance after advance, despite the distinct possibility that he would be facing execution. We all know what happened. Joseph's refusal to give in to Potiphar's wife's seductions did not result in death. No, Joseph hit the lottery. He ended up being prime minister of the entire Egyptian kingdom. the number one power in the entire world at that time. How did Joseph pull off such a coup? I believe he called on a higher power, the power of God himself. You can't underestimate the power of prayer. If you take 100 single young men put in that position of being seduced by a beautiful married woman, I submit maybe 5 would be able to resist her. I'm sure Nehemiah prayed, but he was unable to stand up completely for his God. God doesn't expect life to be easy all the time. The entrance of sin into our world makes everything more difficult. When life gets too difficult, he offers us unlimited help to get through any situation. The Bible and also the entire recorded history of our world verifies that. As I said earlier, when a crisis occurs, we invoke our God. Just listen to the president or other leaders speaking at that time. I only ask that you try prayer to see if it works. If you try it even once a day, God guarantees that your life will improve. I give you that it is complicated, but I have yet to meet anyone who does not believe that prayer helps sometimes, and sometimes is better than not at all. Nehemiah stepped out of Queen Esther's boudoir and strolled to the king's court. He soon saw his king, who was working on a peach and a large bottle of Cabernet. He soon saw his cupbearer. "Hey, Nehemiah, my good man, you look like you are in the finest of spirits this morning." "I am, sir, thanks to you and your queen," Nehemiah bowed. "I thank you for your generosity." "Come closer," the king said. "You said you wanted to talk to me." Nehemiah nodded and moved closer to his king. King Artaxerxes shooed away his other assistants. "Nehemiah, I have a proposition for you." Nehemiah's skin turned clammy and his smile was gone. He knew more trouble was ahead. "I need you to do a job for me. I only have one condition to the job." "Sir, I will do whatever you wish," Nehemiah said as confidently as he could muster. "I have several problems that I believe this conversation will solve." Nehemiah nodded. "The kingdom of Jerusalem is in a very vulnerable position. I understand it has no walls and is ripe for the taking. I also understand that many small kingdoms, such as Philistia and Tyre, are looking at taking over, and there are also rumblings from Egypt herself." "I believe your intelligence is correct, sir." "I know it is. As you are a Hebrew and have significant construction experience, I think you are just the man to rebuild the walls and secure my kingdom of Jerusalem. I would lose a lot of credibility if I let some other country take it over, and it would cost me an obscene amount of money to retake it. I can't let either of those things happen. You understand, don't you?" "Yes, Your Highness. I would be most honored to rebuild those walls and secure Jerusalem from any foreign invasion." Good, good. Now for my other problem." "Oh, how is my Queen Esther? Did she meet all your expectations?" She is the best lover in all your kingdom," Nehemiah said. A wry smile came to his lips, but not to that of his king. "You see, my good man, that is my problem. I couldn't satisfy my first queen, and I can hardly satisfy this one. You know how that makes me look? I am the king of all the world, but as a lover, well, I'm a laughingstock. You, on the other hand, are a real man. You satisfy Vashti, Esther, your wife, every woman." He screwed up his face and tapped his fingers on the table. "Nehemiah, I can't have that. I must be a king in every sense. Otherwise, I am vulnerable to lose my throne. There are many who want to kill me, and all they need is a good reason, a reason why I should not be king. I need to be the best lover in my kingdom." Nehemiah's skin was getting clammy again. "My king, Nehemiah, the only way I can quiet the rumors is if you are no longer in competition with me." Nehemiah bowed deeply. "You know what I mean." "I do." Nehemiah went on to do the king's bidding and went to Jerusalem. He organized a massive construction crew and rebuilt the massive wall of the city of Jerusalem in just 52 days. One of the great building feats in world history. He then ruled as governor of Judea for 12 years before returning to Persia. The final caveat is that most historians believe Nehemiah was a eunuch. How good is your focus, and what do you focus on? Nehemiah is a great example of someone who is able to maintain focus no matter what distraction or difficulty came along. His record of success against severe odds is still marveled at to this day. The rebuilding of Jerusalem also included the rebuilding of at least 9 gates and 34 watchtowers. To put this in perspective, in 1535 the Sultan of Turkey rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem. You will recall that in 70 A.D. the Roman general Titus destroyed Jerusalem and its walls. The Roman Emperor Diocletian rebuilt the walls around 300 A.D. The earthquake of 1033 and the Crusades destroyed the walls again. In 1535 the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire rebuilt Jerusalem's walls once again. It took not 52 days, but it took him 4 years. Again, how good is your focus? Is it sufficient to accomplish your goals? Is it sufficient to accomplish your God's goals? How can you improve your focus? Practice helps. The experiences of life help, but occasionally that is not enough. As Nehemiah and countless millions before you have done, consider using the free app of prayer. On occasion, it just might help you maintain the focus you need to make a true success of your life.